What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, host and creator of Deep Dish Conversations. And firstly, I want to say thank you for all love and support, and thank you for exploring the perspectives of social change with me on this platform. I want to encourage you all to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and on your favorite podcast listen platform. And make sure you give us a 5-star rating if you're loving the Deep Dish Conversations. I appreciate all of the support again. I hope you all enjoy this episode.
This is deep dish, right?
Yeah, well, let's get deep.
So I'm going deep on both sides.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Deep Dish Conversations. I'm your host and creator, Jerome Moore, and you all know all of our guests are amazing. And so we have another amazing guest. We have Tari Hughes with us. And a shout out to the Venture Science Center and the Studio Bank for sponsoring this episode.
Wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you all for making this possible. And then thank you, Tari, for being here. How's it going?
Going great. I'm glad to be here. I've been excited to meet you.
Yeah, no, I've been excited to meet you.
Actually, I've been excited to eat pizza.
See, it's never about me. See y'all. It's about the pizza. And so it's lunchtime. So let's go ahead and
All right. Okay.
You go first.
All right. Thank you.
And so Tari got the cauliflower crust. This is a first.
I know,
and so
y'all.
It's okay. It's all right.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it is. I bet it's good.
No, it looks good. It smells good.
It won't hurt you.
No,
I promise.
And I like, I've had cauliflower crust before when I was, working out and trying to diet a little. My trainer was like, if you're going to eat pizza, at least do cauliflower crust. I said, they make that? That's a thing? That's a thing? And I'm going to try this out. And you can eat and talk and eat. Eat and listen.
I'll try not to talk with my mouth full.
That's all right. That, I don't know if we can edit that out, but that's good. It tastes good.
All right, yeah.
And you got another box to take with you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so,
I'm good. Thank you.
And so, we have our intern, Caden, and it's part of his assignment. He has to submit a question or two or three to me to ask the guests. And so I'm going to start off with that. I usually wait until the middle, but I'm going to start off because I really think it's a good, powerful question to start off with. And so the question Caden, our fabulous intern from Belmont, has given me today, he wanted me to ask you, what are some things you would tell someone who's interested in starting a nonprofit that they might not want to hear?
Oh, that's a great question, Caden. So my first answer to somebody who comes in and says they want to start a nonprofit is, have you looked around to see if there is a nonprofit that does what you want to do?
Okay.
So really do your homework and make sure that you're filling a niche that is needed.
Okay.
Because, and if you have an idea for something different, think about integrating it in as a program into an existing nonprofit. So I think we have a lot of nonprofits, and do we need another nonprofit? So I think really doing your research, doing a market analysis, figuring out what you offer, or who you would be serving that isn't already being served.
Okay.
And if you don't find that another nonprofit is needed, how can you serve that need or that passion that you have, that feeling of wanting to provide for others with an existing nonprofit?
Right. Now.
And sometimes people don't want to hear that.
Right. You're crushing some people's dreams, it sounds like. So, because we know there's people that say, hey, well, yeah, they do this, but mine is different this way, when it's really on paper is not different, but in their mind is different, right? And so how do you navigate those questions? So, and those people who are really feel like what they might be doing something similar, but it's different. How do you navigate those conversations? Or
that's right, and then at the end of the day, starting a new nonprofit is the same as starting a new business.
Right.
It's a different business model, right? And so you wouldn't start a business without doing your homework,
Right.
and without coming up with a business plan. What's my competition?
Right.
Right. So, and we don't like to think in terms of competition in the
Right.
nonprofit sector. That's sort of.
Right.
But it is the same. And then who are going to be your investors?
Right.
So sometimes people come to me and say, I want to start a nonprofit and I've got this great idea and this and that. And I say, okay, and where are you going to get your funding? Well, it's a nonprofit. So, no. Even more, you're not selling anything. So you
need
got
more
the money has to
funding.
come from somewhere.
You need more
right?
starting capital,
Yeah.
if anything.
Yeah. So it's really just putting on your business mind.
Right.
Keep your passion. I mean, I'm all
Right.
about the passion.
Right.
But you just like you would be starting a for-profit business.
Right. Right.
Is there a need, and what is your niche?
Right. So, good question, Kaden.
And if you answer those questions, by all means, go
Yeah.
ahead and go
Right.
ahead and do it.
So, well, I was going to ask you another question, but I want to ask you this: Have you gave somebody that information and kind of advised them, like, maybe it's already something, and they like kind of did it anyway, was successful, or did it anyway and wasn't successful? Have you had both of those stories?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, and people don't always come and ask me, like.
Right.
But I think there's. Just like in any business,
Right.
Some of them make it, some of them don't. And
Right.
the more you've done your market research and gotten your, your investors, your family and friends on board. Those are the
Right.
first investors in any
Right.
business.
Right.
And then see where it goes.
Let's talk about your background and your passion for nonprofit and kind of where that started, that led you in the role that you're in now with the Center for Nonprofit Management.
Well, I grew up here in Nashville and went to Hillsborough High School.
Woo! A native. I always love when the natives get together and we're here and we can talk about the good old times.
Exactly. Well, I think I got you beat there,
Yeah,
but
you got me beat there.
But grew up in Nashville, and my dad is in the ministry.
Okay.
And so we grew up with a service mentality,
Okay.
mission work, that kind of thing. So the idea of what most nonprofits do wasn't new to me.
Right.
But I was exposed. Many years ago, I was loaned to the United Way, and I was a loaned executive to the United Way campaign. I was an executive at 23, but that's what we were called. The company that I worked for, which was a big company here in Nashville, Ingram,
Okay.
loaned me to the United Way campaign, and it was at a transition point there for me at Ingram, and giving me a little time to either look for a job or for them to find a different job for me. And I learned about this whole side of Nashville that I didn't know about, which is nonprofit agencies. I just
Right.
hadn't really known that's how a lot of the work got done.
Right.
And so as part of our work, we made site visits to lots of different agencies because what the group of the loaned executives went into the workplace, into the corporate offices, and helped them implement their workplace giving campaigns for the United Way. They don't do it that way anymore, but that was really my first exposure to nonprofits. And since I was supposed to be looking for a job anyway, I started networking with nonprofits and thought, well, okay, maybe I'll find a job there.
Right.
Well, anyway, Ingram, long story short, Ingram found me a job back there, and I took that. But then one of the feelers that I had put out called me, and I ended up going to Vanderbilt, which is a nonprofit. It's a very big one.
Right.
And I became the alumni relations director at the law school, and then stayed at Vanderbilt in various capacities over a number of years, and then ventured out into the smaller nonprofit world, which is very different from a big university, and went into the arts, which is something that I love, and did fundraising for the Tennessee Performing Arts Center,
Right.
Tennessee Repertory Theater for a while. And then after some time there, I moved over to the library, and I ran the Nashville Public Library Foundation, where we were able to support nonprofits. We were able to got nonprofits on the brain, where we were able to support the library with private funds,
Right.
and really augment the programming that the library was able to do.
Right.
And so that took my university background and my arts background and put it all together in a place that's free to everybody. So it was a
Right.
wonderful, wonderful time. I was there for 12 years. And then I used the Center for Nonprofit Management Services in all of those jobs
Right.
to develop myself professionally. I took workshops, used their consulting services. I actually served on the board for a period of time. And so when the job of CEO became available, even though I loved the library, I thought, well, I've been here 12 years, and we
Right.
just finished a big campaign.
Right.
And so I kind of put my hat in the ring,
Right.
and now I'm working to
Yeah,
help
you're the
all the
CEO of the-
nonprofits.
you're right.
Yeah, and so I came up. The bulk of my career has been in the industry, and
Right.
I just feel so strongly that there are ways that we can work together as a sector even better.
Right.
And I've really had a good time. I've been
Now-
there 5 years.
And I think you may have been at the library then when I was working with the adult literacy program with Megan Godby
Yes.
and like Liz and so yeah,
My
I was
buddies.
what year was that? I think that was around Peace Corps came. It had to be like 2016, 16. Yeah, it had to be like 2016.
So
something
I
like
worked.
that.
I
15,
left at the very end of 2016.
16. Okay. Yeah. So I
I
probably
knew you looked familiar.
Oh, but no, that's
Yeah.
I love the library.
That's a great. That's a great program. That adult literacy, what they're doing is
exactly.
fabulous.
And like New Americans and all, like it's.
I
and-
love that
and
too.
I didn't, and being from Nashville, born and raised here, I didn't know how much the library offered until I
know.
worked there.
It's
Like,
amazing.
look, I didn't know this the civil rights room was there until I worked there. I had no idea. And now on the other side, they have like the women's.
The women's vote.
But yeah, and I just came across that randomly when I was taking my son Jameson there. I'm like, oh, they did something with this side too.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like it's so many hidden like things at the library that
Right.
that we just I think very maybe underutilized
And
in a lot
the
of ways.
the studio for
Yeah,
teens, and of course the
green
puppets. Don't
room,
forget
the puppets. Oh
puppets.
yeah, I've been to a couple puppet shows, and so I was there. I was at everything. Like, oh, what's going on? Like, I want to learn how to work one of those and stuff. So it was really cool meeting the people that made all that stuff work.
Yeah.
And no, and it's like one of the like most community centered things that you can have, right? Is a library. So
Mm-hmm.
and it's a nonprofit. So question, being that you're serving all types of nonprofits now, right?
Yes.
How do you navigate when somebody comes in and say, hey, I'm a social justice nonprofit, or I'm a nonprofit around food, or I'm a technology? Like, how do you navigate so many different types of nonprofits that exist?
That's a really interesting question, and the way we do it is there's a certain foundation that to be well run, all nonprofits need to have. They need to have a well functioning board. Many of them need a really good volunteer program. Need to know how to fundraise and how to diversify their revenue streams.
Right.
They need strategic planning, and so we're sort of the foundation. And it really doesn't matter what your mission is. We can help be sure that you are strong and equipped to perform your mission, right? Not to perform, to act, impact. That your impact area.
Right.
So, one of the things that we love to do is encourage people to work together.
Right.
And sometimes that's similar types of organizations like literacy.
Right.
Like, the adult literacy right now, not only at the library, but the adult literacy, Nashville Adult, NALC, National Adult Literacy Council, and several others are working together.
Right.
They all do things, they impact that space of of the needs of adult learners
Right.
a little bit differently. So they're working together to be sure that they're not working in silos and they're
Right.
not duplicating their
Right.
work.
Right.
It's called collective impact.
Right.
And that's one of the.
Which can be hard to do. You
And
gotta
that's-
have the
it
right
is-
leadership to want to be able to do that.
You got that right. You got that right. Yeah.
And so
So what we try to do is just empower the nonprofits to be strong, well-run, organized, efficient, knowledgeable in how
Right.
any nonprofit needs to be run, and then sometimes there are certain nonprofits that you could bring together all the arts organizations
Right.
and talk about some things that are specific to that part of the sector.
Speaking of diversity,
Yes.
I have noticed, I think, a different intentionality around nonprofits trying to be diverse, and around the whole diversity, equity, inclusion kind of mission, movement. And some people, say it and don't do it, or everybody does it. Their intentionality around it is different, and how genuine it is, I think, sometimes can be questionable, especially in light of like the George Floyd situation. I think that's when I personally started recognizing a lot of businesses in general, just not nonprofits, trying to like understand and be more intentional about
Yes.
diversifying their staff and their boards and what that looks like. Have you seen diversity and inclusion there, being inclusion and equity kind of transform in the nonprofit sector over the years? And I know there's always more work that can be done, but
Always more
how
work to be done.
have you seen that?
I think that's that's an understatement. Always more work to be done, and the more we learn, the more I learn in my personal journey,
Right.
the more I realize I have to learn.
Right.
I don't know. It's a continuing journey. So we recognize the need for intentional work in this area, probably 2017, and in 2018 started doing intentional work with our staff. We
Right.
thought we've got to start with us
The self.
first before we're able to bring it out to the sector. So we found a curriculum and started. We extended our weekly staff meetings every week by an hour for this. It was a 12-week curriculum, which brought us level set on definitions. It was. Sadly, there were a lot of things in that curriculum that were new to many of us, even that we thought we knew,
Right.
but we didn't.
Right.
And so that was really great. And then we worked with an organization called Crossroads, organizing. It's a national group out of Chicago, although the people that work there are all over.
Right.
They were remote before remote was cool. And we brought them in to do some full-day courses on Introduction to Systemic Racism.
Okay.
And we actually did our first one at the library. We had 100 people
Wow.
from across the nonprofit sector learning about systemic racism. And we did that 4 times that year, and we added a 2.5-day deeper dive, not deep dish, but deep dive, and where teams came. And so we
Right.
were able to have teams of 4 from 11 different nonprofits to take the 2.5-day. They'd already taken the intro, so
Right.
it was a deeper dive, and really trying to set them up to be able to take their learning back to their organizations and begin intentional work on there.
Right.
And we did that twice that year, and then we did it again the next year with that group. But we also began putting DEI principles into everything that we do, all of our workshops. We began to
Right.
look, okay, who's teaching our workshops?
Right.
Who's doing our consulting?
Right.
Are we reflective of the community that we're serving?
Right.
We need to bring on some new faces that
Right.
are black and brown, and
Right.
because we humbly were examining ourselves
Right.
and realizing without, certainly not the intentionality, but that
Right.
we were pretty much a white institution.
Right.
And so that the organizations led by people of color may not be as comfortable coming to us, may not
Right.
even know about us.
Might not even think they're welcomed.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and so we really are working, again, work in progress,
Yeah. Right.
to instill all of the principles that we to instill the principles in our work.
Right.
And as I say, it's a work in progress.
Right.
But we are, and then it's very important also for any nonprofit that it's not just the staff, also the board.
Right.
And you asked me a question about, well, we can get to that, but about leadership at the executive director, CEO role.
Right.
And I feel like to make a change in those statistics right now, I mean, in Nashville, I bet it's 90% of nonprofits are white-led.
Right.
And the communities being served are mostly, in many cases, communities of color.
You're right.
So that statistic needs to change.
Right.
And it's only going to change if the board of each of these organizations understands the importance of not only diversity,
Right.
but inclusion,
Right.
leadership roles,
Right.
C-suite roles, right? And then, of course, equity. So,
Right. When you talk about like systemic racism, that can be very uncomfortable for many people, especially even in a training. Especially if I think if it's a training that's done right, people are going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be kind of tense because people have to take some accountability and reflect on their own implicit biases they may have,
Right.
and how they looked at things, right? Which is okay,
Right.
But you have to be willing to be vulnerable and to say, hey, I might have been thinking wrong here, or just my implicit biases, I didn't even know I was doing that, right? Subconsciously.
right.
And I'm curious, what did you learn about yourself during those trainings while you was participating in them, about things that helped you grow, or some things that you just might have missed that you wasn't trying to intentionally do, but it was just like
Right.
you was kind of just doing?
Right, right. Well, since those introductory courses, I've done a lot of reading, and I've participated in even deeper dive experiences. I participated in a group of CEOs that we met monthly for like 5 hours, really deep diving into this. But I know you're familiar probably with the book White Fragility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what comes up a lot
Right.
in these trainings
Right.
is I didn't mean to. It's not how I meant it.
Right.
All and so we have to deal with that. We have to
Right.
face it,
Right.
right? And it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I really try to read every couple of weeks is there's a list, 15 characteristics of white supremacy, and it's Tima Okum, or I think that's how you, or Tika O. Anyway, I always
we'll get it right. I
Yeah,
know you're
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about that.
yeah, but 15 characteristics of white supremacy, and it's things that I would never have thought of as, like being perfectionistic,
Right.
a sense of urgency, and so it's really reframing the way I relate to the world.
Right. And that you don't have to be white to carry white supremacy mannerisms.
Absolutely.
And I try to make and so I have to reflect on what personally, I had to do that work too, right? Because I think a lot of us can just project and think this only for white folks, right? No, we all can be indoctrinated with white supremacy. This is an indoctrination. That's how I feel personally, and that's why I always say we all affected by it. And if we look hard enough, we might be carrying and doing harm to our own community, not even know it. And so, just to give you an example for myself, something I had to check myself on, right? And this is just how deep it goes. And it's just it just gives me this. When every time I think about it, just say to myself. But because of the environment, because of the environment that I grew in, and because the propaganda of what I seen of people and the images of those who grew up in my type of environment that are black, that look like me, especially men, right? When I see a black man, or when I've seen a black man in the past, I might get more defensive. I might feel like, I might see him as a threat, just because I know we we look like we might be from the same area, so let me be on my P's and Q's, and that's just an indoctrination of just like white supremacy, self-hate, right? That's what that is. So I had to check myself on why do I feel this way, because I see this other black man that looks similar to me or have characteristics that threaten me, right? And I had to do some deep work on that and really try to be more intentional and be like, hey, showing love and say hi, how you doing, and I hope hope you're having a good day. Just just being more welcoming and open and not being defensive and on guard as if like I have to defend myself or ready to like for something to happen. So that's just something that I know I had to work on. That's a characteristic of just like white supremacy.
Right. We're taught to fear black men.
Even black, like, so it's just,
Right? I mean,
right.
And it goes back and back and back and back.
Exactly.
We talk about, some of this is actually in our bodies.
Right.
The trauma has come through generations.
Right.
For black people, but
Right.
also the same that fear is indoctrinated
Right.
through the generations.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, I don't want it there.
Right.
I don't want it there. I
Right.
don't want to feel that way.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to do that work, and it's good to hear that the Center for Nonprofit Management is like being intentional with their work. Now, were there during those trainings, were there any organizations or leaders that kind of like couldn't make it through or kind of push back on that? Because like again, it can be very tense, and like I think it's a healthy tense that it can be. But sometimes like people just don't know how to digest it. So was there any pushback from some of the leaders or organizations?
So the pushback that I have gotten has been from not from the trainings necessarily, but
Right.
that some of the things that I have said in my writings, in my emails to our they feel are political. I don't feel are political, but I've had some comments, and I've actually had some conversations about it. One person was kind enough to reach out that way, and I said let's talk, and
Right.
he wanted to talk, and so we had a couple conversations, and just kind of looking at really from a different standpoint. He was
Right.
looking at it from a different standpoint than I do, but we did have a conversation.
Right.
And it's just interesting how what to me is so obviously not right and needs to be fixed
Right.
can be interpreted as by taking a stand about that
Right.
as political. I don't feel any politics about that.
And I've read articles about DEI, and some people rephrase it as DIE, right? Because they feel feel like, and this author was a white male specifically in academia, and he felt like that the DEI mission was affecting departments in a negative way because the DEI mission and trying to implement that was bringing in recruitment of folks that wasn't really qualified and passing up his white male students. Like, so he was breaking it down in that way, like, because everybody's trying to push this, like, it's actually making our departments work because we're not getting actual people that's qualified. We're just getting them basing off their race or their color, their ethnicity, and this just so he was like, of course he left out like a lot of like historical like discrimination and like all these things that led to the initiative to even need to be started. He completely like ignored that. But like, so I like reading and hearing the opposing side too.
Yes.
Because I might miss something, or I can at least say, oh, okay, I might get it from like maybe if I was in your shoes, why I might feel that way too. And so it's just interesting.
Well, that was the pushback on affirmative action for that exact rationale.
Right. And
Well, but this is where equity comes in.
Right.
This is where equity comes in.
Right.
Right. Let's make sure that black students and white students have the same opportunities, the same
Right.
education, not the same,
Right.
but
that's the difference between the equal and equity.
Exactly.
Like, that's why I tell people, like, long as it's equitable. I don't know if we ever be in a world where everything is equal. It's just, but equitable is like where I would prefer and want us to be as a society.
Right. So instead of
Yeah.
saying my white students are not able to compete, and they're,
Right.
better, smarter, or whatever.
Right.
Let's make sure everybody's
Right.
able to compete.
Right. Let's make sure. Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so there's plenty to go around. There's plenty of jobs.
Right.
We hear it every day. People can't fill jobs.
Right. Right.
There's so let's think of it as abundance of abundance
Right.
of
Abundance.
talent,
Yeah.
and let's make sure we develop that talent.
Right.
We're doing a partnership right now with the Urban League of Middle Tennessee, and it goes back to we were talking about leaders of color of nonprofits. We are anyone who identifies as a leader of color can apply for what we're calling it the Sam Howard Empowerment Fund. And
Okay.
Sam Howard was a very prominent black businessman in Nashville who was involved with the Urban League. He
Okay.
passed away, I think, about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago now. And he was known for mentoring black businessmen, young black businessmen, and some of the people that he mentored have become,
Right.
built amazing companies
Right.
and so on. Anyway, so it seemed apropos to name this program for Sam. But at any rate, they apply for the program, and they're able to. We have scholarships to workshops and professional development at CNM, and there's small group coaching, a cohort coaching, where they meet, I think, monthly, and it's just this group with a facilitator, and the experience that they report of this community of color.
Right.
They've developed a community, being able to share experience and
Right.
not have to check words and not have to,
Right.
it has been really, really powerful. But the
Yeah.
idea of this program is to develop a pipeline of leaders of color to get up into leadership levels in the nonprofits, so that eventually that 90% statistic
Right.
changes.
Right.
And it's, we're increasing the number of nonprofits that are led.
What's going on, everybody? This is Jerome Moore, creator and host of Deep Dish Conversations, and I know y'all enjoying this episode, but just real quickly, make sure y'all hit that subscribe button and hit that notification so you can be notified when we drop new episodes and interviews. All right, I appreciate all love and support, and let's get back to this episode. And so I'm gonna read off these statistics, and these are gender parity in the nonprofit sector. All right, only 21%, and this is more like navigate to our next kind of question. Only 21% of large nonprofit CEOs are women. Just 7.5% of nonprofit executive staffs and 14% of nonprofit boards are women of color. Women in nonprofits make 66% of the salaries of their male counterparts.
66%.
66%. Now, you're a woman.
I think so. Last time I checked.
You're a woman. And you've been able to navigate these stats in a way and be a CEO of a, I would say a nice size nonprofit here in Nashville, right?
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the barriers that you faced, though, as a woman, moving up the ranks and trying to find your way? Unfortunately, I'm not a woman, so I can't speak to those barriers, but I want to give space to you as a woman and our women listeners and watchers, that they may be able to understand. You can let them know some of the things they may have to navigate, and they may be able to relate to you as you kind of breaking this down to us.
I was interested in those statistics, which I think are national.
Right.
Observationally here locally, I see more women at the helm of nonprofit organizations, but not necessarily the big ones. If you look at the really big ones, most of those are led by men, I will say. So, I mean, we already talked about how long I've been around.
Right.
And things have changed so much for women in the workplace from when I first started. Just so much.
Right.
And we've got a lot of women that came even before me, to thank for that. I actually did a leadership insight yesterday with my team, and we do that once a week in our leadership meetings. And I highlighted Shirley Chisholm, who was first Black Congress woman, and she ran for president. And I was like in middle school, I guess, when she was prominent, and I was
Right.
like, yeah, loved that. So she is one that came before and really helped change the world for a lot of us.
Right.
I don't know that I myself have really. I haven't thought about as a woman.
Yeah.
Would I be leading a bigger nonprofit, or would I
Right.
be leading a business if I was a man? I don't
Right.
know. I don't know.
Or like even maybe the microaggressions that you may have like encountered.
Well, and so that's what has changed so much.
Okay.
Is yes, some of the microaggression and the sexual
Right.
harassment, really, if you will.
Advances, harassment,
It was
yeah.
okay. I mean, it was okay. It was tolerated.
Mm.
I mean, that's changed so much.
Right.
There's a lot more respect. And at least if
And
someone...
there's a lot more women speaking out, like are brave and courage enough now to say if that happens, like they're not afraid to go to HR
That's
or or just call it out, right?
Yes.
Which
yes.
which is powerful, I think.
But I do think going back to the pay disparity, I think in a way women are still penalized for being the main family. They do their jobs and they take care of their families, and so
Right.
there's maternity leaves. Sometimes women will, after one or two kids,
Right.
Step out for a little bit,
Right.
and then coming back in to the workforce. They haven't earned necessarily, and they're willing to come back in at a lower salary. So I think there is still some. I think that is taken into consideration, and you might call it. I don't know if that's a microaggression. It seems kind of macro to me, but
Yeah, no.
but
Like, and
it's a bias.
Yeah,
it's a bias. I would say it's a bias, and even on the HR side of things, and often women are the HR. I think employers just don't see women, particularly with families, quite as all in.
Yeah. And it's funny. This was my introduction that I received. So I to like pay and how that works. All right. So I majored in economics at MTSU, and I took a labor economics course.
Okay.
And so we talking about everything: money, employment, monopolies, all type of stuff, right? And literally, I can't remember my professor's name, but he literally broke down from an economic standpoint on why the premiums of salary, right? Whether white, black, male, female, and he broke down like statistically, broke us down economically on why women got paid less in the economic world, with like kind of how it made sense, and it was because that factor that they factor employers and factor like, oh, they may get pregnant and might have to miss time, multiple pregnancies maybe, and all that factor into this premium that rationalized why women got paid lower than men. And I was like, why? And so
It has nothing to do with what they do on
doing
the job.
No, it has nothing. It's just literally about the sex, about the possibility
Exactly.
of because their sex, the possibility that they could have kids and these things. So it's just that blew my mind. Like, oh wow, like I don't know. Like this was 2000. Was this maybe 2011, 2012? MTSU. But yeah, so that was my introduction to like how it was broken down to me in an economic business fancy way that rationalized the pay disparities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like blown away by that. And that there's actually like a formula that is used nationally to dictate like premiums based on people's sex, color, and all these other things.
So then take that a step further, add race into that.
Yeah.
So women,
Right.
What about black women?
Right.
What about
Right. It gets
right,
lower
right,
and lower, right?
Right. And that's true. I mean, I'm involved in this organization called The Table, and it is it's of course kind of like deep dish conversations, but it's around a table.
Okay.
And it's really trying to change a lot of things and make the community more open to using vendors, vendors of color,
Right.
the workforce, all
Right.
of that. And there was a presentation there recently, and it showed nothing's changed since 2011. I'm afraid it showed the pay by race and gender, and it's stark.
And so that makes
Yeah.
and so when you see those, because when
But
you see
that's not nonprofits.
right,
That's just
it's
overall. Yeah.
But that's when you see that from 2011, and you see on the surface like all of these efforts being made to be, inclusionary and create equity and diversity, but nothing like economically has changed for folks that are being like harmed the most and like disenfranchised, and disparities affected the most. That's just like, it's like, so what is happening? Like, we have all these people saying these things, but the numbers are showing something that like no, like, it's more commercials, it's more advertising around, it's more marketing, more PR, but
I mean, maybe the
That's
percentages were
crazy.
higher, but it was
That's
still
wild.
very stark differences.
Right. That's just, and that's what kind of blows my mind a lot of times
Yeah.
when I see those things. Like when I think about like how politics of like affected like black and brown folks, right? Since 1968, when we have more representation, more politicians of color in these elected official seats. But if you look at like socially and economically, like voting hasn't changed or giving us any more social and economic power from 1968. So I'm like, it's the system. It's a whole system catered to this.
calling it systemic
racism. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm like, you just, but that'll take over the whole conversation. But I do want to navigate into we will really stay on money. And when I was looking at like nonprofits nationally, looking at the data, I was seeing that there was racial disparities in the gap of funding that nonprofit that might be, white led or non-black led is getting way more funding or grants than one that might be led by black or brown folks or people of color. How do we address that? What are ways? What is causing that?
Yeah, so this is a huge topic. And fortunately, it is at least being talked about in the philanthropy, on the funder side.
Okay.
I don't know that it's, some organizations are changing. But, so the funders, traditionally, I'm thinking like foundations,
Right.
they have their rules, they have their, cycles of funding, and you fill out certain forms that you might get invited to. Some of them are invitation only.
Right.
Some of them are not. But first you have to know about them.
Right.
And foundations aren't really any different than any other kind of relationship where you're trying to fundraise. It's a relationship, right? So let's say so it's really important to be able to form a relationship with those officers, those program officers at the foundation, if they allow that. Most of them do and have, but if you don't know each other,
right.
So there's this, there's all these organizations that are doing great work, maybe at the grassroots level, maybe they're smaller, led by people of color, who just don't know these. They don't go in the same circle, so they don't know each other.
Right.
And then the requirements often from the foundations of how you apply, and then also reporting are onerous. And if you're just getting started, you may not, be successful in that way. And so there's a lot of talk in the philanthropic community, or from the nonprofit community to the philanthropic community, but you have to be kind of careful, because you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you either, about changing and making it more accessible, more equitable, right? And we have a couple foundations locally that I think have set a great example. One is the Maddox Fund,
Okay.
and the other one is the Healing Trust.
Okay.
They've actually both done a big change in the way they fund and who they fund,
Right.
and pretty dramatic. And so that means that some of the traditional folks that they had been funding aren't going to be getting funding. And so there's also then, you know,
The other side.
that
Yeah,
hurts.
Yeah, that hurts. Yeah, yeah, that hurts.
And so I think there's a lot of room for improvement and a lot of room for growth. But I am pleased to see that on a national level that this conversation is happening. There's a really good book. It's called Decolonizing Wealth.
Okay.
And it's by Edgar Villanova, and I can get you how you spell that.
Yeah.
But he is a Native American and worked for a large foundation in North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, and he tells about that experience. But he has a lot of ideas of how the funding community writ
Right.
large can address this issue,
Right.
because it's very hard for Native, Indigenous, Black, Brown-led organizations
Right.
to navigate the system
Right.
that has been set up forever.
Right.
And it's also, you know, he even goes as far as to say the wealth that was amassed that made these big foundations, you know,
Right.
Carnegie, all of those, you know, the big ones, was on the
back
backs.
to black and brown folks.
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's like kind of that's a fact.
Yep.
That's like that's there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a deeper dive.
Yeah, it's a deep dive.
That's a
It's
deep
a deep
dive.
dish.
That's a deep dish dive. Yeah, but I'm glad it's being talked about. And you brought up like that circles, right? And I think that has a lot to do with that network, because if my blackness or just my color in general is because of like everybody evolved from slavery, right? It's coming up from slavery. Well, we probably not affluent financially, and I'm probably in my own community bubble that's not putting me close proximity to those that
Exactly,
are,
yeah.
wealthy and things like that. We probably not going to the same schools.
That's
and-
like,
it's
we're
like
this,
so we
yeah.
so we go so it's already made for us to miss each other, and you're gonna miss me and I'm gonna miss you, and then and now like you up here and you're giving the money to people that you know and that that you see and have proximity to, and I'm here and I have to figure out how to climb that ladder, and I don't have too many opportunities to fail because I might have to start off my own starting capital, and that can be shaky, and then I might get a grand or two here, but it can be the boat can flip over at any moment, and then I'm like, well, and then if I don't have access to the knowledge to how to navigate the access, right? Just access to knowledge is another thing too. Like where are these grants, who's giving them, or these foundations, who are they? How do I reach them? Like just that knowledge would even help, I think.
So one of the things that we're doing that I'm pretty excited about right now in our community impact and equity initiatives area, led by my colleague Dawn Stone, who I need to introduce you to Dawn.
Okay.
But we are working with the mayor's office, the community safety office that is doing the gun violence reduction program, and they are giving relatively small grants, but grants to some grassroots organizations working in North Nashville.
Okay.
And those organizations, we've contracted with the mayor's office to do some capacity building with those organizations. So there's about, I think, 26, could have that number plus or minus, but 26 organizations. And we're doing same kind of work that we do with
all
nonprofits. Right. But they're a cohort,
Right.
and we're doing once a week, like how to fundraise and how to put together a proposal that will be noticed by a funder, and lots of different things. But it's really exciting because these groups are the ones that are going to be really mitigating what's happening in North Nashville, and we want them to survive and thrive.
Right, and you need resources.
Exactly, they need resources. And so this is a resource. We're also, the contract allows us to help them with audits.
Okay.
Because that's required as part
Right.
of the grant process.
Okay.
So we're they know the work, so it's a perfect example of how you started.
Right.
They know the mission, they know what needs to be done,
Right.
and we want them to stay around. And so
Right.
how can we make sure that they've got, the basic foundation, just
Right.
like any nonprofit needs.
Right. And somebody they can reach out to and ask
Yeah.
questions, right? Like,
Yeah, and so those 26 organizations as part of this program are now members of the Center for Nonprofit Management. Most of them weren't before. Some of them were, but most of them weren't before. So now we know each other,
Right, right.
and can help.
yeah. No, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
No, that's
So
awesome.
it's a pretty exciting we
The pandemic has happened. We're still in the pandemic, but it hit. All right.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
And
that.
here in Nashville, we got a double whammy, right? We got
sure did.
we got the tornado in 2020. The pandemic hit March, and really hit the United States hard during the same time. And we still in it, with Omicron and Delta, and who knows what else is coming. Hopefully nothing else, but it's
Well.
not looking that way. How have you seen our nonprofits here kind of respond to the pandemic, and how has the Center for Nonprofit Management been like an aid and resource and pretty much crisis response?
That's exactly what we called it, crisis response. So I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they asked I asked a similar question, and they started talking about March 17th, and then blah, 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 what they did. And I'm like, well, for us, it was March 16th. And here's what we did,
Right.
We had never done anything virtual. We had just signed up for a Zoom account because we had a partner in California wanted to have a Zoom call, and we're like, what's that?
Right.
And so we had just in the last maybe 4 or 5 months, we knew what Zoom was, but
Right.
And so what we did, it was such an energizing time. It was scary, but also it was just like, okay, what are we got this, and all 800 of our nonprofits are like, they're depending on us. Sort of like, suddenly we know why we're here.
Right.
So we had this like esprit de corps thing going on. It was great. We divided into, we had a big brainstorming session, all these, big Post-it notes all over the wall, and we divided into 3 task forces,
Okay.
and then we just, we just went for it. And so we suddenly did everything virtual.
Right.
We decided that we wanted to make everything we did for our members free.
Okay.
Because normally there's a fee it's a discounted fee, but for coming
being
to
a member,
workshops
yeah.
and things like that, we're like, we don't want to be perceived as trying to make money,
In a pandemic. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we canceled our event that we do every year. It's called Salute to Excellence. It's an awards program where we raise the money and then give away about $250,000 in award money, and it's a big event and it's so fun.
Is that the one done at the Omni? Or
Yeah.
So I did one. I was a guest with Souls for Souls.
Haha.
Yeah, with Buddy and
With Buddy.
and Bernard Turner.
And Bernard.
Yeah.
Dr. T. All right.
Dr. Bernard Turner. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Because he be getting on me about that.
He's awesome. He's one of our very most popular, although I won't say oldest, longest serving and most popular workshop facilitators. He's awesome. Anyway, we decided, well, we can't have we can't have a celebration during a pandemic.
Right.
So we went to our funders and said, will you, what you would have typically given for award money or event sponsor money, will you please give that to us and let us offer free services? Because, I was also committed to keeping my staff whole, right? Not having to downsize the salaries.
Right.
And so we did we had a great response from funders. Not everybody gave 100%, but it helped us keep us afloat so that we were able to provide, to do the workshops virtually. But then we started a crisis response. We started some what we called town halls.
Okay.
We did a survey, a needs assessment, like what are your pain points?
Right.
And then we began programming on the pain points.
Okay.
So we just kind of threw everything else out and just flipped to making everything we did responsive to the here and now.
Right.
So how do you fundraise in a
Right.
pandemic? How do you lead in a time of crisis?
Right.
All those kind of things.
Were you all a hub for nonprofits to come and figure out how to possibly get the PPP loans or some of the SBA just funding as well?
We had yes, and then we
Okay.
did a leadership, not a leadership. What was it? What did we call it? A learning series.
Okay.
On specific things. So PPP. That was a
Like
big topic.
the idol.
A big topic.
Yeah.
And we helped match people with expertise.
Okay.
There, and yeah, so we just tried to. Oh, and then we had what we called quick consulting,
Okay.
which was I am being asked for a contingency budget. I don't even know what that is, and so we had. Consultants that were able to sit with somebody for an hour or 2
Right.
hours and go through it as a specific problem that they had.
Right.
And we were able to do that without charging. So
Okay.
it was great. We helped 38 different agencies with that particular
Wow.
service. And so what's interesting is we served over 6,000 people in 2020. And really just from March to in 10 months, we served over 6,000 people. When people came to our offices, a good year was 2,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying those were 6,000 different individuals. Some people came to everything we did.
Right. Right.
But we flipped our programming. And so what was really fun for us and my staff and our team was the feeling that this is why we're here.
Right.
To help nonprofits navigate.
Right.
And now they need us more than ever.
Right.
And so it was creative and energizing time. Now, I
Yeah.
will say it drug on, and that resilience waned a little bit over
Right,
time.
Right.
But yeah,
Yeah, no,
2020 was
like-
tough
like-
and like no year we've ever had before.
We all had our highs and lows, I'm sure, during this pandemic.
Yeah, I think 2021 dragged on. It dragging on. It has. We had a gathering this morning, again virtual, for nonprofit CEOs, and we had about 40 CEOs that were on the Zoom call, and it was about imposter syndrome. And what was clear is we all have it.
Right, we all have it.
And also, CEOs of nonprofits have been through a lot, and they're weary, and there's just a level of fatigue that was palpable, and
Right.
so I need to see what we can do to jump in, and even if it's just more conversation so that
Right.
they don't feel alone.
Right. Or pizza, they always usually pick
Pizza.
up some morale.
There you go. There you go.
So I want to end on this note, Terry. What does we're still in the pandemic. Nashville is growing. 100 people are still moving here.
They sure are.
It seems like I don't know when that's gonna stop. Maybe when there's no more housing, people will realize like you can't physically live here. What does our nonprofits here look like, and what does the Center of Nonprofit Management do to continue to support our nonprofits in a growing city?
In a growing city.
Here in Nashville.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so, I think the it's great that Nashville's growing. Yay, the economy's great in Nashville. And the problems that have existed for a really long time are getting worse. Housing.
Right.
Childcare is a huge crisis.
Right.
Transportation, social determinants of health,
Right.
disparities. All of that is exacerbated.
Right.
It's exacerbated by the growth. So I think people are realizing that, and I think as new corporate citizens are being lured to come to Nashville and are seeing what a great place it is, I think they're being asked. I'm hopeful that they're being asked to be good corporate citizens and help solve some of these problems.
Right.
We've got to fix the transportation and the housing.
Yeah, I think transportation is one of the things that's stopping Nashville from being like an all-world city. Is we have to because we have these folks coming from Chicago, New York, LA, and they have pretty good, public transportation, reliable public
Right.
transportation systems, whether it's subway or a tram or something.
Mm-hmm.
And we just don't have that. We've always been a driving city, and
Yeah.
but we haven't always been as populated.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you can remember when you can get to one part of town, another 10 to 15 minutes, and then have to worry about even the time of
10
day
minutes
was.
from anywhere.
Yeah, and you didn't have to worry about if it was
Yeah.
3 o'clock or 1 o'clock, right?
Right.
It didn't matter. You could just navigate.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, so I think the growth,
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line in nonprofits, it's put more pressure on nonprofits.
okay.
So,
And that's more nonprofit. That means there's more pressure on the center for nonprofit as well, then, right? To be able to accommodate.
yeah, and how do we need to pivot even further?
Mhm.
Even further.
What is one of the most creative things that you all were able to do, or that you all never did before, because of the pandemic and just because of how everything is going right
Yeah.
now?
I think a couple of things. I said we did a needs assessment survey right at the beginning of the pandemic. We did that 3 times during that year, and then we have done it another couple of times since. So what I talked about relationships.
Right.
We need to be in relationship. We started off as an organization, and this goes on to our whole conversation. We started off as an organization at a time when there wasn't any other way to know about how to run a nonprofit.
Right.
And it was our experts were business people who were helping nonprofits. Well,
Right.
since that time, nonprofits have become a profession. The internet got invented.
Right.
Lots of things. So there's lots of ways that you can know about nonprofits. And so I think one of the things the value that I think we can even improve on more is being in relationship with our nonprofits and listening to what they need and thinking about, how can we help them, like these CEOs who are fatigued.
Right.
I don't have a workshop on CEO fatigue,
Right.
but maybe there's a way I can bring these CEOs together to talk. So
Right.
I just feel like there's opportunity to be more creative and to answer the needs, but we have to listen. We have to be in
Right.
relationship. I think
Right.
a long time ago, we just knew what was best. Father knows best.
Right.
So, we're not father anymore, but
Right.
we're a partner, and we can be a convener.
Right.
We can,
Gotta help 'em
what
build.
can nonprofits
Yeah.
do with all the growth that's happening,
Right.
and help
Right.
present a unified voice. So,
How can people tap into the resources that you all offer, or reach out to you
Yeah.
if they have more questions about
Yeah.
their nonprofit, and if they really need to start one and things
Right.
like that?
well, we have a pretty robust website at CNM, Center for Nonprofit Management, cnm.org, and there's resources. If you look under every topic, there's resources, and there's some resources on how to start a nonprofit, and that would be the place to check out first.
Okay.
And there's a lot of resources there. Come to our workshops.
Okay.
A lot of the things that we do are free. The town halls that we do, we've kept those town halls. We
Okay.
don't do them every other week. We do them once a month.
Okay.
But those are free to everybody, whether you're a member or not. And this month, in honor of Black History Month, all of our DEI workshops are free to members and $20 to non-members.
Okay.
We have individual membership that you can join if you aren't affiliated with a nonprofit.
okay.
But if you are affiliated with a nonprofit that is a member, if you're a staff member or a board member, you're able to take advantage of what we do at the member. You're a member too,
Right,
so you
you're
just
right.
have to
Okay.
register under your nonprofit.
Perfect. Well, look, y'all go check out, and they have a job board too. They
Oh,
have crazy.
oh,
Yeah, they have
yes.
they always have jobs in there.
That's
So-
right. If you're a nonprofit that needs somebody, or if you're a person who wants to work in the nonprofit sector, go to
Right.
our job board. It is awesome.
I always send people that that want to do nonprofit work or trying to find jobs. I send them to the site. Like,
Great.
it's one of the best
Mr.
job
Ambassador,
boards.
thank you.
Yeah, it's one of the best job boards I've seen And I think that Nashville has. So people take advantage of that. Terry, I want to thank you for being here and
my pleasure.
Giving us your perspective, your gems, and everything that you're doing with the Center of Nonprofit Management to help build Nashville and make it a better, just and equitable place for all of us to be. And you're native here, so we gotta look out for each other.
Exactly.
We unicorns,
exactly.
right? Thank you all for watching and listening. Thank you all again to the Nashville Adventure Science Center and the Studio Bank for sponsoring this episode. And make sure y'all watch this episode and all the other great episodes that we have. See y'all soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
No, thank you.